don't think I'm going to pull up ROH. I'll just let you kind of.
Well, I wasn't even going to mention a whole lot.
I have NWA pulled up, but I don't have.
The only thing I was going to mention with Ring of Honor is their show in St. Louis coming up, and they've announced a few matches already.
Yeah, so the Jay Lethal one looks good.
Is that for St. Louis?
I believe so.
I got to check. For everyone that has joined us, thanks for tuning in. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. So just enjoy the view of Cole and myself. Just kidding. There's nothing to see here.
Speak for yourself.
Well, okay, I'll speak for myself.
There's plenty to see here.
Again, for everyone that's joining us currently, thanks for tuning in. We usually go live about 4 or 5 minutes early just to give people a chance to jump on, and then we officially start the show. The first 5 minutes of this usually does not go onto our YouTube channel or onto Apple Podcasts or Google Play or anywhere podcasting can be accessed. Carmine, how we doing? William, how's it going? Hope you guys are having a good morning so far. Again, we'll get started in about 3 or 4 minutes. Again, the reason we go live early is just to give people a chance to jump on, and also to maybe, if you guys wanted to chime in on your thoughts on the United States title as a whole, since that's what we're going to be talking about. Anything from the old school Mid-Atlantic days to the current WWE version, since it's all the same lineage, just drop us some posts, comments, thoughts, and we'll try to read them while we're on. Again, we'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes or so. T.O. is here.
The man, the myth, the legend.
It's going to be all 3 of us this morning. That's a nice little surprise. Thought it was just going to be us 2 for a little bit, and then he might have popped in later, but cool. I'm glad I got our 3-cam setup going, because I talked with Everett. Everett's our IT guru specialist. I talked with him yesterday about getting just a 2-cam setup, and he said he already got that going, but I thought about having that this morning, and I'm like, well, if T.O. jumps in, then I'll just have it ready. But so 8:58. We'll get started in about a minute or 2. So yeah, I've got the whole card pulled up here for that event.
He's supposed to be in a 6-man tag match, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
that's why I'm trying to go. I just have a lot going on that week, so I don't know if I'm going to get to. But
the thing about Ring of Honor is that I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, from what I've heard, if you go to a live event, they're always really fun to go to. They've had a couple at that Gateway Center in Collinsville.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think recently, but so again, everyone that's joined us, thanks for tuning in. We'll get started in about a minute. If you have any comments or thoughts, suggestions on the United States title, drop us a comment. Let us know. We'll try to read it while we're on the air. We'll start off the show by recapping briefly this past week in the wonderful world of pro wrestling. So we'll give about another minute, and then we'll officially get started. You guys want to give me a mic check real quick?
Hello.
Good.
Mic check, mic check.
You guys can hear okay?
Yes, sir.
Cool. It's 9 o'clock. Here we go. There are certain mornings I think to start the show off by, McMahon back in the old days, whenever he was a commentator, he'd be like, "Welcome, everyone." But then I realize it's 9 o'clock in the morning and no one wants to hear anyone do that, much less me do my Vince McMahon impression. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Going Broadway podcast. We're already on episode 6, gentlemen.
Yeah, that's nuts.
I'm Alex. Cole is here. T.O. is here. Apparently he is sponsored by Apple because all we can see is his laptop. That's okay. He's probably bringing in the big bucks on that sponsorship.
Shh.
Guys, what is happening?
Not a lot.
It's going.
T.O. sounds like he's on like talk radio over there.
Not a lot.
That sounded exactly the same.
Well, I'm trying to do my best here.
It is the morning. It is the morning show.
We'd be tired.
So this edition we're going to talk about briefly, just kind of recapping AEW from last night, NXT from last night. Suppose we could tackle overall from this past Monday. There's a couple of things on there, but as usual, not a ton. And then we're going to talk about an old school topic as well as a current topic, the United States title. I figured we would talk about a topic where we'd all have our kind of unique perspectives and thoughts and opinions. So we'll talk about that during the second half. As usual, if you guys that are joining us, if you have any suggestions or particular topics pertaining to the United States title that you'd like for us to talk about or questions, feel free to drop us a comment and we'll try to get that on the air. So last night, we'll just start there. Last night we had AEW and NXT. I told Cole before we went on, I have actually not watched NXT from last night yet. However, I did read what happened. I did watch AEW. You guys pick. Which one do you want to start with? NXT or AEW?
Let's start with AEW.
Yeah, your call.
All right. So AEW, I'm trying to refresh my memory. They started last night. They didn't start last night with a match.
They started
with
with,
Moxley's promo.
John Moxley's promo, yeah.
And then they did the whole
Bring
Yep.
the Mexican cartel
yeah,
pretty much down.
essentially they just built towards their match at Revolution, which we all knew was coming. Excuse me. And then they actually had a match, and their first match was it the Young Bucks match? Did they open with that?
Yeah, they had Young Bucks
And Butcher and Blade.
Yeah.
I think AEW needs to start doing a better job on a week-by-week basis, and a lot of this is going to have to be the fact that they need to expand their roster, I think. But in the beginning, I think it was okay, the fact that they just kind of put matches together so they'd have a card. But I think they need to start doing a better job at the storytelling aspect, and we've kind of touched on that already. But one thing that I kind of found is kind of like a refreshing type thing is the fact that, okay, I see where they're going with this. They had that little 30-second promo video where MJF paid Butcher and Blade and the Bunny, whatever, was in that envelope, supposed to be money, obviously, to basically destroy the Young Bucks, which didn't end up happening. What do you think of the match itself?
The match was good. I mean, I liked it. I liked that the Young Bucks came up on top on it and got a dub, because I feel like they need to actually work on building them back up. So now they kind of just pushed them to the wayside in 2019.
I agree.
So it was good to see them win. I thought the promo at the beginning was pretty cool. I thought it was shot very well. I'm just kind of interested to see where they take this storyline, though, because right now it doesn't really have like an end to me. It doesn't. There's no resolve to it. It's kind of like the Butcher and the Blade got hired to beat up on the Young Bucks, and MJF is feuding with Cody. So it's kind of like, at what point does this thing go stale or go away?
Right. Or at what point do they have to go a different route?
Excited for the 8-man tag next week. And I think that looks good.
I agree, and we'll touch on that in just a second. As far as the match itself, you can tell the Young Bucks still try to do their usual spots, and depending on who they're wrestling, it either goes over well or it it falls flat.
Yeah.
Or it's somewhere in the middle. I feel like with Butcher and Blade, it fell in the middle, because whether they discuss spots ahead of time, some of them worked. You could tell some of them didn't. So I think it just depends on the matchup itself, if the Young Bucks can actually have a good match. I don't think they can have a good match with just any tag team. And a lot of it, I think, is the fact that either Butcher or Blade, one of the two, I forgot which one, but this is legit like their first big wrestling. Well, A, this is their first big wrestling organization they've ever been a part of. Two, whichever one it is, he's not even been wrestling for that long. Again, I don't remember which. It's whichever one of the two is in a band.
Probably the bigger guy.
Well, I just legit don't remember. So if you're watching and you can shed some light on that, I know it's one of the two. I just don't remember. But that factors into it as well. I do like the 8-man tag this upcoming week. I think that's going to be an intriguing match to watch. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to later on in the show where they're, post-match. I left that part out. So they did the schmaz with Omega and Hangman Page coming out, and then
Hold My Beer.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
And then fast forward to later on in the show where they're talking with the Bucks and Omega in the back, and then Page comes back, and he's bragging about, hey, they put our name plates on the belts, and Page is like, he's talking to the Young Bucks. He's like, they made nameplates for you guys too, talking to the Young Bucks, and he handed them their nameplates. He's just like, hold on to these for later. So I like the fact that they're teasing something, but they're not being completely open with what direction they're going. But at least they're planting seeds along the way.
Right.
So they're getting better when it comes to the storytelling. But I think they need to do that with their entire roster, and not just do it on their Being the Elite show, or not just doing it on their YouTube channels. All Elite Wrestling has their own YouTube channel. The Nightmare Family or whatever has their own YouTube channel, and that's like they try to push storylines, but just on their YouTube channels. So, and I get that it's only a 2-hour program, so they're limited on what they can do. But, so moving along, I know they had their Nyla Rose and Big Swole match. I actually didn't watch that one.
It was all right. It was clear that they were putting over Nyla Rose because she's the number one contender.
Yeah.
For Riho right now, but
what still cracks me up about AEW's women's title belt is it's so tiny. So if you put,
it has to be when your champ weighs 85 pounds.
Right, but if you put the belt on Nyla Rose, it's literally going to be like she can hold it just the whole belt in
She
her.
wraps it around her finger.
It's something. It's like, I don't know. I felt like that kind of gave it away in the beginning whenever it was those two for the belt. The fact that the belt was so tiny, it's like, are you really going to put this on Nyla Rose? It's just going to look silly on her. So, anyway, I digress. So then you had the Cody Kip Sabian match. I actually liked this match. I thought it was a good match. I liked the Arn Anderson spot where he bumped the referee and he made him leave.
It was kind of cheesily done though. Like
I think that's why I liked it though.
It was almost like the referee kind of oversold it in a sense. Like it seemed like
referees always have to oversell everything. That's their job.
It was like Arn got in the ring and he was like, Arn, don't you do it, and like Arn had already done like 5 things wrong and he's still saying, don't you do it, don't you? I was like, bro, he already did it. Like
mm-hmm.
And then Arn bumps him and then it took like 15 seconds for the ref to be like, you're out of here, and got all like extra. It was just like, I think it was a little overdone, but
yeah. The ending of the match I thought was kind of cool. Cody hits 3 crossroads back to back to back. And I think whenever I'm watching something on TV, any kind of sporting event, again, whether it's wrestling, basketball, football, whatever, if the crowd's into it, that makes it much more enjoyable for myself as a viewer. And I think everyone would agree with that.
Right.
It's almost kind of a duh statement. But, I mean, the crowd was popping hard at the end for those crossroads that were back to back to back. So that definitely helped the enjoyment factor of that. And then we kind of touched on this before we went on air. Britt Baker has another awful promo, better than last week, but still awful.
So there's thought that this is on purpose.
That the bad promos are purposely done.
That she is not this bad. That it is and it's almost, there's 2 camps. Like, people are fighting on Twitter over this, that you're a mark. You're buying into this. You think you're an absolute mark for saying she's awful. And it's funny because then it's turning, no, I'm not a mark, you're a mark. I'm not a mark, you're a mark. Because people that are giving her tons of crap for it being so bad,
mm-hmm.
Their defense is, it's supposed to be that bad. You're a mark for not being able to see that. And then the rebuttal is, you're a mark for defending her. She's just horrible. So what are your thoughts?
I don't think she's horrible. I think I've seen her cut good promos and I've seen her be good at what she does. So I definitely could believe it's a work or a storyline, but it's not good. Like, it's not entertaining. So like, even if it's done on purpose, it needs to stop. Like, it's not good. It's not helping her. It's not putting her over as a heel. I told him, I was like, the things she said didn't even make like sense. Like, she's talking about she's a dentist and she told, Tony Giovanni that he had such bad gingivitis she could smell him. I was like, that doesn't even make sense. If you're really a dentist, tell them, hey, whoever wrote this it doesn't even make medical sense. Like, let's do something else. We did talk about how that Baker line at the end was funny though.
That was the only part of the promo that
she
was
probably wrote
decent.
That. I guarantee you that was the one thing she wrote, and everything else was like somebody who wrote it down for him was like, hey, say this, and it's like, this person's obviously not a dentist.
For those of you watching, basically the line was a play off the fact that, making fun of Cleveland Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield. She said, finally, they have a Baker that they can believe in, or something like that.
They can trust in.
So what's really funny though is that, obviously I understood the shot that they took on that, but it was like, it almost felt like the crowd was just kind of like dead on when she said that. I mean, they didn't react a whole lot.
No, because it was bad.
But anyway,
why? I don't know if we talked about this. Why do you think she ended up in AEW?
She wanted a lax schedule, as a reminder.
She wanted the flexibility of still with her dental practice, and I'm sure that if she went to WWE, they'd put her on NXT, which
so
good or bad, whatever.
But she's dating. I mean, her boyfriend's. The one thing we know of WWE is you get pushed. I mean, they love the couple storylines. They love They love that, and depending on who you're dating or with at the time, depends on your push. And the fact that I guess I'm shocked WWE didn't make her more of a priority, that they didn't go after her as hard. And if you're saying it's the schedule, how much more?
If they basically just said, hey, forget your dental practice, we're going to pay you however much you think you would have made and double it or something like that.
I mean, does she really have a practice that she's there 3 days a week? I mean,
here's my thing. At what point?
I'm being serious. I don't know if she does or not.
At what point do you have to choose though? Like what you want to do? Like those are two separate professions that really need your full attention.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go anywhere in wrestling, it's got to have your full attention. If you're gonna do a dental practice and you're gonna run it, it's got to have your full attention. So I mean, at least with NXT, if she was to go to NXT, it's stationary in Florida. Like she could move.
That's what I was
going to
say. Almost
to Florida
with the travel and the schedule,
she could pop
NXT,
in and out and mentor other dentists if that's what she was wanting to do. But
yeah, the fact that her dental practice isn't it in Pittsburgh? Isn't it where she's from?
I'm not sure. I was just curious.
You would think wherever she calls home would be where it's at. But the other thing is she's pretty much been on TV more frequently here.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like at what point do you choose the one or the other? You know, which one's the priority? Because I don't think there's an ideal world for her where you can be successful in AEW and be the champion and go and be the dental, you know.
Because there's a storyline right there that AEW, like, you want to touch on reality. Everybody knows she's dating Adam Cole. They're having the Wednesday Night Wars. Wouldn't your storyline right away be that I stole your girl? And you, without saying, you don't mention Adam Cole's name.
Okay, so here's a very interesting topic that, I mean, we can talk more about. Her dental practice is in Florida.
I figured it would be because that's where
it's in Winter Park, Florida,
which is right there.
That's so funny.
That is, it's pretty much right by Orlando.
Yeah,
that's an hour away from Full Sail, I believe. Right?
Probably.
I think I looked it up because we were talking about going out there to watch an NXT show, and it's like an hour away from Orlando to NXT. There's no way she's going there 3 days. I mean, like, AEW's on the road. By the time they get done with the show, they might have a day or two to go home. You know how much more money she's spending though on travel going back and forth if that's what she's actually doing. I have a hard time believing that.
So here's the quote. She did an interview with Bleacher Report last year, commenting on her ability to work both her dental practice and pro wrestling. She said, "Both of my worlds are very understanding of the other. I have an agreement with the dental office I work for that will be closed on Wednesdays because I'll be in whatever city AEW Dynamite is in, and AEW is okay with me flying in super late Tuesday night after work or even early Wednesday morning. They're also really good at getting me on the first flight back to Orlando Thursday morning. I get right off the plane and go to work. I am still able to work 4 days a week as a dentist."
why?
Exactly. That doesn't make any sense to me.
But why do that? So
unless she just really likes being a dentist.
He just said that she basically has it set up to where her practice is closed on Wednesdays. She flies out late Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning to wherever AEW is at, does the show, and then gets on the plane early Thursday morning, and goes straight back to work and works 4 days a week as a dentist.
So that tells me she's probably not getting paid that much.
That or she chose to not get paid that much. Obviously, they want to push her as the face. Otherwise, she wouldn't be getting the TV time and the things that she has. But again, I go back to if you were in NXT, you probably have slots that you have to do at the Performance Center and things like that.
And as creepy as some of these wrestling fans are, some of the weird stuff they do, you had the guy showing up at the Performance Center that was throwing the pee and the poop, and he had mixed like a concoction of milk and pee and poop. And do you remember that 3 or 4 years ago?
No,
they had to arrest him. Like he showed up at the training center.
I mean, that doesn't shock me.
He had all these videos.
Are you insinuating that maybe people go to her in Florida and do weird stuff at her office?
Not weird stuff at her office. I'm just saying, like, being a dentist and wrestling fans being the way
you're saying
the
close proximity might cause some kind of a.
Yeah, like a little bit of a safety concern.
That makes sense. That
So
makes sense.
My question goes back to though, at what point does it become you have to choose?
Maybe she has such a booming practice because of her. I mean, think of the
I mean,
people who go Dennis
could
A
see
or
that
Dennis B.
if they knew, that she's there in Florida and they knew who she was, I could see people going there. I'm thinking, like they want to, obviously they want to push her as the champion.
Yeah.
At some point,
Yeah, for sure.
they clearly have plans for her. So my question goes back to, at what point do you have to choose? At what point, if WWE offers you a contract that's,
It kind of goes back to some of the problems we've talked about with AEW letting so many people have their cake and eat it too.
That's true,
Jericho
though.
being able to go do all this other stuff. Moxley being able to go do all this other stuff.
See, I don't know if she's on the same playing field as Chris Jericho and Moxley, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you lose Britt Baker if you're losing star power like that.
No, but
versus someone like Moxley. Moxley could go to any division and put it on the map.
I think they kept her and went after her just for the simple reason that it's Adam Cole's.
That was my thought, because she probably it was apparent to both WWE and AEW that she wanted to do both. WWE probably said no, absolutely not. AEW was just like, you're Adam Cole's girlfriend. This will kind of put a twist on things. We'll sign you. We'll let you do both.
We'll name another.
We'll call it good.
And there's a huge storyline you could do there if you
name
chose.
another woman though in that division that has as much clout as her in the independent scene. I mean, there's not many girls that are there that are like, oh, I know who that is.
I don't know who any of them are now. I mean,
I know Rio had a huge Japan presence, but other than that, like, I know Awesome Kong and Brandy Rhodes because of Cody, but other than that,
one of their names is the Bunny. I go back to that.
I knew Allie from Impact, but like I don't get the new storyline with her. But
yeah. Anyway, so moving right along, SCU versus the Hybrid 2. I don't get that tag team nickname.
I need to look that up of why they're called that. I've never heard them called that until last night.
Yeah. I thought wearing the Kobe jerseys down, I thought that was a really cool tribute gesture.
Especially since they're SoCal.
And the fact that people in Cleveland, they received it, even though their star player, a la LeBron James, left Cleveland to go to L.A. The fact that they're just, it was received well. I thought it was cool.
An interesting play on TNT too, because that's where the NBA,
Mm-hmm.
the NBA has been on TNT for years.
I love how they were wearing the different numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought that
agree.
was cool too.
We're going to kind of speed through this. So SCU picks up the win there. Wasn't really surprised. And then the Dark Order thing with, Christopher Daniels being upset that he turned them down.
They teased again though that there was a higher power in the Dark Order. So I'm just curious to see when we find out who that is.
Yeah, not to spend a whole lot of time on it. I think it can only be one of two people. If they want a name, it's either going to be Matt Hardy or Brody Lee.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'd probably go with Brody Lee. That's what I would think, Brody Lee.
But kind of a side note, I read yesterday that he is supposed to be debuting for AEW sometime in March, whenever they're I think in Rochester or somewhere in New York, but it's his hometown, and they're just wanting to
see if he gets a pop.
wait to get the reaction. So we'll see what happens there. And then you had the little segment with Pac talking about Moxley, if he gets the title, going after him, but he's going to focus on Kenny Omega right now. They're obviously going to set up a match with him and Omega at Revolution. But one thing I wanted to bring up, if they do that, do you do one of two things? Do you still have a tag match with Paige and Omega against someone else for the titles at Revolution and have Pac cost them the titles, or do you just not have a tag title match on the card and have Pac versus Omega?
Well, they might do it to where they set up a number one contenders match for the belts for the tag titles at Revolution. There might not be a tag title championship match.
Yeah.
Or
do you just take the belts off of them before, like on
That
Dynamite?
that
and have
could very well
and have
happen.
Pac cost them the match and that set it up. I don't know.
But you only have so many so many weeks before that
Oh,
can
yeah,
happen.
for sure.
So
You're
you're
right.
going to build that storyline because they're teasing the Hangman Page turn too. So I don't know if you can have them have Pat cost the titles because I feel like that ruins the Hangman Page turn.
I agree. They're teasing a lot of stuff, which to some degree I actually like because it doesn't make it predictable. It kind of
A lot of
gives
balls in there.
it gives them
for sure.
scenarios to work with, and it keeps the audience guessing, which is a good thing. So then they announced the 8-man tag next week, and then they conclude with Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz against Darby Allin and Private Party. I actually watched bits and pieces of this match. I didn't watch the whole thing, but inevitably I caught the end where they're teasing a lot of near falls with Isaiah Cassidy, which is kind of cool, but then ultimately he gets that
Judas effect.
I can't even think of the right word. It's fine. I'll pass on it.
I still just think it's crazy how over Chris Jericho is. Like, again, he comes out to the ring this week and everyone's singing that song. I mean, he is the most over heel. I think people love him still.
He's just innovative. He always comes up with something and the ability to reinvent himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It just blew my mind last night that even when he was coming out to the ring, he still had the whole crowd chanting. And this is one of those matches that I just felt like was thrown together again. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to this match at all. I mean, Darby Allin with Private Party, who none of them really are feuding with any of those guys.
No, but I think the little schmoz at the end where they had like the skateboard thing, I think they're setting up a match, whether it's on a Dynamite or for Revolution. I think they're going to set up a Darby Allin and Sammy Guevara match.
Which would be good.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be something new. It'd be fresh.
They're both young guns that can get up and move. So
Yeah. So that was pretty much AEW for this week. Like I said, I didn't watch NXT. We'll actually save that for last. I want to mention a couple things about NWA and Ring of Honor because I promised I would kind of I'd try to cover those a little more. So NWA, they have their Power Show on YouTube now. I think they're into like
episode 13.
I was gonna say I thought they were in the mid-teens. I've probably watched in full maybe 3 of them. I feel like they've got a lot of good guys on the roster, but then a lot of guys are just for nostalgic purposes. I know that they actually had their tag belts on the Rock and Roll Express for a while, and they finally took it off of them at their most recent pay-per-view, which was actually this past Friday or Saturday, or was it the weekend before? Either way, they actually put their tag belts on Eli Drake and James Storm of, I guess I'll say, TNA/Impact fame. And then they're setting up a match with Nick Aldis and Marty Scurll for the NWA title. I mean, that's really about it as far as NWA that intrigues me. I know a lot of people like it because it's got the old school feel, the old school studio wrestling.
I just didn't realize how many people were on that roster. I'm just looking at, I didn't realize Melina was there.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't realize Elijah Burke was there, Trevor Murdoch. They have a roster. James Storms and Eli Drake tag team together is phenomenal. There's a lot. I love Nick Aldis.
They've got a lot
They've
got potential, but
Sandow, whatever he goes by now.
Aaron Stevens.
Aaron Stevens.
He's actually he's their NWA National Heavyweight Champion right now. Excuse me.
And
What's funny about that is
they're
he
using him
looked-
way better than Impact did.
He looked
it's-
terrible on Impact, though. His ring performance was terrible there. So it's just, you look at this roster, and I'm kind of like, I'm shocked that you don't hear more about them.
Yeah, I think if their only presence wasn't just solely YouTube, I think they'd have more of a talking point. But the fact that they only have an hour I think it's just an hour show every
I'm gonna be honest,
week.
I haven't watched an episode, but now that I know what the roster is, because the only person I knew when I went and looked the roster up online, which they don't really have anything online about it, the only people I could find that I knew was Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, and Eli Drake, but it wasn't enough for me to be like, I need to tune in and watch this. But now I'm looking at the card for what looks like is tonight for episode 15, I believe,
It was actually last night.
or last night.
Yeah, it's no, it was the night before. I'm sorry, because they do theirs on Tuesday nights.
I need to start watching because there's some guys on here that I would love to keep up with and kind of. This says that Aaron Stevens did a karate demonstration, and I need to watch that. Like that. Look,
I mean,
that sounds entertaining.
Again, we sound like a broken record, but there's so much wrestling content out there now. I mean, you've got Raw on Monday nights, Tuesday nights you've got NWA and AEW Dark on YouTube. You've got NXT and Dynamite on Wednesday nights.
SmackDown Friday.
SmackDown on Fridays. I could have sworn there's something on Thursday nights too.
Where's ROH? I don't even know. I couldn't tell you when ROH. I try to watch the recaps, and that's how I stay up to date on ROH.
Ring of Honor. I want to say Ring of Honor is also on Tuesday nights, but I'm second guessing that. I gotta look. Hold on, just 1 second. Ring of Honor is
Impact might be Thursday nights.
Ring of Honor is also Tuesday nights.
Impact's probably Thursday nights.
It could be. Let's just look. Oh, come on.
If not, Thursday's like the Sabbath day of wrestling. Because it's like the only day that you wouldn't have a wrestling event. Saturday and Sundays are always.
Impact is also Tuesdays.
Wow. Thursday's the Sabbath for wrestling because Saturdays and Sundays are pay-per-view. So.
William says Bad News Barrett is the commentator on NWA. I forgot about that. So yeah, I mean they've got a lot.
Is he hurt? Like, is he not able to wrestle?
I don't think. I think they're just having him as a commentator just because. I don't know if he's going to ever wrestle or not.
NWA, listen, change that. He is one of the. I want to see him wrestle.
So I'm gonna move to Ring of Honor real quick. I don't have a ton to say on Ring of Honor, but I did want to plug a show that's actually going to be fairly local to us. So we broadcast out of Edwardsville, Illinois. We're about 20-25 minutes northeast of St. Louis. They have a show on Saturday, February 29th that I would actually probably go to if I wasn't already going to Revolution the same night. It's at the Family Arena in St. Charles, Missouri. What's about 45 minutes from here, I think.
I think I'm going.
Give or take. Cole says he's probably going to go, but
the card looks pretty good so far.
One thing I want to mention is that anyone I've talked to or anything I've read has said that most Ring of Honor shows, whether it's a TV taping or just a house show, they're always fun to go to because the crowd is always into it. And I think that's part of the problem with AEW is that they started it thinking that they're going to have all these rabid hardcore fans at all their shows, so that like each show would have that Ring of Honor indie feel, and they just don't. Whenever you have one-off cards like All In before All Elite Wrestling was a thing, yeah, you're going to have those type of fans show up to it because there's nothing at the time. There was nothing else. But whenever you have Dynamite shows every week, you're not going to have the same. You're not going to have that same feel because you're booking 8, 9, 10,000 seat venues, whereas Ring of Honor is doing maybe 1,000,
right,
2,000 max. But they've got a really stacked card for that day. Again, it's Saturday, February 29th. It's at 7 p.m. It's at the Family Arena in St. Charles, Missouri. Their world title match is PCO versus Rush versus Mark Haskins. You've got the world television title match. Dragon Lee, which if you've not watched a Dragon Lee match, I mean, he's good. He's really good. He's going against Dak Draper, which, if my understanding is correctly, A, Dak Draper is undefeated, and 2, he's actually from the St. Louis area. So I think that they are doing that match for obvious reasons. They've got the 6-man tag title match. Bandito, Flamita, and Ray Horace. I'm probably pronouncing some of these names wrong. Against Jeff Cobb and the current Ring of Honor World Tag Champions, Jay Lethal and John Gresham. They've got Villain Enterprises, which is Marty Scurll, Brody King, and Flip Gordon against the Briscoes and Slex. I don't know who Slex is.
I've never heard of him.
I mean, I think he's an Australian wrestler, but that's all I know. I might be even wrong on that.
But I'll be watching.
They've got Silas Young and Josh Woods against Vincent and Bateman. I wonder if that's, when they say Vincent, I wonder if that's like
I hope
Vincent / Virgil. Probably not. And then they've got They advertise this as a first-time ever match. Alex Shelley and Dan Maff. So, fresh off the heels of the NXT Dusty Rhodes Classic, Alex
I
Shelley
still
goes
don't
from
know. I don't know where he's at because they interviewed him after that match and it like teased like he was coming to NXT, but I don't know where he is on that.
Yeah. So, more than likely, I don't know if that's going to be a house show or a TV taping or not, because it's on Saturday the 29th, and their shows are on Tuesday nights. So, I don't see where it's
probably
it says either way. But anyway, if you're in the St. Louis area and you've never been to a smaller wrestling show, I'd encourage you to go watch it. Again, I'd probably check it out if I wasn't already going to be in Chicago. So, all right, let's talk about NXT real quick. Again,
You want that or Raw? Because you said you might want to bring a couple things up. On
well, the
Raw.
only thing I wanted to bring up about Raw is obviously they confirmed the title match with Lesnar and Drew McIntyre. You kind of saw that coming. They had set up the Edge and Orton match. Kind of saw that one coming. I told you that I've talked to Cole about this a little bit. One thing I did not see coming that they're rumored is that Charlotte is actually going to challenge Rhea Ripley for the NXT title. If they go that route, that's smart booking because I mean I wouldn't have thought to do that. I mean that it's rare that now in the days of wrestling that you can pull a rabbit out of the hat and surprise fans.
Well, because I still think there's a lot of people that went back to the mindset that NXT is the C show, though, even though they've been pushed hard. And so I feel like that's the kind of booking for WrestleMania to try to include NXT in a way that's like, don't forget, they can challenge for NXT belts. Like, it's not like a NXT exclusively can come to the Royal Rumble and challenge them. It can go the other way around, too.
I don't get Charlotte winning. Like, does she have to be? She's already the big star. She's already
Well, we talked
the
about
main
it.
female. I know you guys did, but like, is it one of those things to where you think that they need her to be in a position at every WrestleMania because of the press?
I think ultimately they need her more than she needs them, and I think that's clearly evident.
I think it's clear that they need to move her too. I think they made a mistake putting her and Becky both on Raw, because now if you look at SmackDown, there's lack of star power there. The NXT Women's Division is great, and I really don't see her winning the belt. I don't see her winning the NXT Women's belt.
She'll never go there. She won't go back down
unless she's requesting
time.
Unless she's requesting time to chill out a little bit. You know, we also talked about she went and got her indie name saved. So maybe she's on her way out. And
how old is she?
Probably the early 30s, if I had to guess.
I think she's a little bit older.
I was gonna say mid 30s, but let's see what the Google machine says. She is 33.
33. Okay, so you got to look at this too. She's engaged. You know, and again, people do not think a lot about this with female athletes. I've dealt with female athletes in another profession, another time in my life. You know, having kids is a real thing. Ronda Rousey's going through it right now.
Which is a rumor that she's not going to be at WrestleMania.
100. Yeah, I mean, why was she not at the Rumble if she's going to be at Mania? Regardless, this is stuff that, you know, in soccer, the girls plan this stuff around Olympic years and around World Cup years. So, you know, Charlotte might be looking at this that she's, you know, going to get married in a year, immediately start trying to have kids after that. So maybe she wants to work a lighter schedule. Maybe, who knows? You never know with that. But with her being 33 years old, the window for a female to have a baby, it gets harder after a certain age, complications after a certain age. So, you know, not to say that she wouldn't come back after having a baby. I think there's been a few women that have done that. But, you know, that could play a part of it. Speaking of amazing wrestlers that are pregnant, both the Bellas are pregnant. We're never going to see them in the ring again. That's awful. I'm joking. They are both pregnant, but could care less if we see them in the ring again.
Kind of piggybacking off that, and those are good points. I mean, we don't know what the situation is with her and Andrade, but again, like Cole said, they both, and this could have been just a business decision, but they trademarked their independent wrestling names whenever they're pre WWE / NXT.
What was Charlotte's?
Ashley
Flair.
Spelt differently though.
She had a couple of different ones, I think.
The one she did was Ashley Flair, but it was like
FLEIHR or something.
Well, did you see that WWE just went after? It was like Bobby Lashley. They trademarked people that were using their real names. They went and tried. It was Bobby Lashley. I think there's 3 or 4 wrestlers they did it to, but they were trying to file their trademarks in response to someone had just done it. So maybe this is why they both did it, seeing that they did Bobby Lashley's and doggone it.
It could have just been a safe move. It could mean nothing. It could have just been them being safe, knowing that they might need it at some point in time. But the things looking at Raw, like, why did McIntyre go over the OC? If you're going to throw a tag team for him to destroy, why was it the team that you've been trying to build up for the past year for him to wipe? That, and the other thing that excited me is I got to see MVP do the ball and elbow, and it was a terrible match. It wasn't good at all, but I got to see him do the ball and elbow, and that was good.
So this is a perfect example of the gap in wrestling. I had no idea who he was because that was a period of time when I didn't watch and wasn't watching. So
MVP was like the guy you wanted for mid card though. Like he was so good at being a heel in the mid card that he was the kind of heel that you wanted. And then he went off to Impact, and I liked him in Impact too. He created stable in Impact as well. But
he went to New Japan too.
He was just fun because he's just a mouth. Like he just runs his mouth the entire time, and he's just fun to watch. That someone did talk about how his entrance was kind of lame because there was no pyrotechnics, and he used to come out with like this huge like blow up tent over the thing, over the Titantron right there, and it was just cool. And so it was cool to see him. I don't think he's back. I think that was in his home area because he's from San Antonio.
Yeah. So the initial report was that the Royal Rumble wasn't his own, like it wasn't a one-off thing, but he wasn't going to work a regular schedule. He was going to do a few appearances, but then he posted either on Instagram or Twitter that was his last match. So conflicting reports, obviously, but I mean, I'll take MVP's word for it that he's done. Kind of a side note real quick back to the Flair and in particular Andrade thing. So Andrade got suspended for 30 days due to a wellness violation.
Why didn't they take the belt off him?
Especially that night. Like,
so what I've been reading is that Heyman said, Paul Heyman, who was in charge behind the scenes, he thought it wasn't a good decision, to take the belt off Andrade just with where they're at in his storyline, and then at least with the matches he had with Humberto. Even though Humberto's had like, I don't know, a dozen United States title matches and lost every one of them, I don't know. But they didn't think it was the right time to put it on him. So I'm just like...
Well, it does make sense. They did have him hit that thing on the concrete, so that could put Andrade out of action for 30 days while he's suspended.
That was the purpose of it, just to write him out of the storylines. But again, I agree. I feel like anybody that fails a wellness violation, even if it's their first time, they should not be representing your company as any sort of champion.
The only thing I can think of is if it was something that he tested positive for, that there was some type of doctor prescription that wasn't presented beforehand, because that has happened before. I highly doubt that's what it is. But one thing I heard is they're setting up a belt versus mask with Mysterio at WrestleMania, and they didn't want to have to play hot potato with the belt leading into that. So I still don't understand why
that's going to take him out all the way through Elimination Chamber. Elimination Chamber will have such a big card, I'm sure, that you won't even realize that it's not on the card.
Yep. But you could have put it on Mysterio. Still, you could have done that, and then just, I guess, though, for it to be a belt versus mask. Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot of flip-flopping at that. So,
and so the other thing I was going to mention about Raw was, I have to remind myself again because That's been a few days. So you mentioned the MVP thing, and then
We had Buddy Murphy and Rollins versus Owen and Joe.
Samoa Joe apparently got injured, taking a bad bump during a spot that looked.
It was his shoulder, right? Or neck.
I thought it was his head or neck. So,
Gee, what
I feel like
veteran hurt him? Because I didn't watch it, but I'm sure it's someone that they haven't rushed to the roster.
Well,
no,
it was
just
middle. He went through the middle rope and he did like a shoulder tackle through the middle rope.
it was his own fault. I mean,
It was kind of how he landed it or whatever.
I'm assuming. I thought it was going to be one of the guys from AOP that injured him.
No, it was because it was against Rollins and Murphy. I think he did it unintentionally going through the rope on a dive. But if he's had that many injuries, why do you have him do those spots?
and that's what I was going to touch on. He's been very injury prone ever since joining WWE. I mean, he joined WWE back in, what are we talking, 2014, 2015?
Been probably six years, somewhere in there.
Well, yeah, and I'm talking going back to NXT. So, if I guarantee if I look up how much
It's like 4 or 5.
how much time he's been on the shelf, so to speak, I would say he's probably been a third of the time he's been with the company, if not longer.
He's had like 4 or 5 injuries, and my thing is, they obviously like him, otherwise they wouldn't have kept him around. But my thing is
Who's that?
Samoa Joe.
Oh yeah, they like him, and I think that.
I mean, you had him as a commentator.
I think that's the big plan, though.
And he was good at it.
Very good, and I think that's.
But at what point, if you're going to keep having him wrestle, do you tell him, hey, we're not going to do that spot? Like you're not going to dive through the middle rope and risk your body again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's also older too. He's been in the wrestling business for over 20 years probably. I mean, he was in Impact as like a baby and was probably there for at least a decade of his career. So he's got to be coming up close to 20 years, if not more.
Yeah, he's 40 years old. I think he's been in the business since he was in his late teens.
So I mean, like he's at a spot in his career where he probably shouldn't be diving through the middle rope onto people, but hopefully he's back in time for WrestleMania because I felt like they had plans for him. There was probably a Owens and Samoa Joe storyline planned at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Samoa Joe was 19 when he debuted. He's been in the business for 21 years.
Yeah, I think it's about time to hang up the diving through the middle rope.
Yeah, I mean, he can still wrestle. I just think
he's a submission specialist.
Yeah.
Like go back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So that's, I mean, as far as Raw goes, that's all I wanted to touch on.
Randy Orton Edge, you don't want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, they did the cool thing at the end, but I mean, it wasn't predictable. I mean,
don't forget about Liv and Lana. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I am going to forget about that because I have no desire. I have no desire to talk about that whatsoever.
Yeah, the Edge thing was cool, man. Like I loved that he got to come out and talk. You called it though, man. You and I were talking, and we weren't sure if we were going to get a rated RKO like tag reunite kind of thing, or
it was definitely one or the other. But I kind of saw it as, Edge coming back. Orton's going to be a guy that he can go in the ring with. They know that they're going to take care of each other. No one's going to get hurt.
It also gets the ring rust off of him a little bit, I think, without having to worry about learning a new guy's style.
Yeah. Just as far as the segment itself, I mean, I thought it was a good segment, but I read that so Bubba Ray has his Busted Open radio show. He thought it was one of the best segments he had ever seen. I thought it was good, but I was like, okay. In terms of Bubba Ray, it's like, do you think it was good because these are the guys you were in the business with at the time? Like, do you just have a soft spot for them? Are you partial? I don't know. I was like, is there something I was missing with the promo? Again, I'm not trying to make light of it. I thought it was good. I don't know. So then NXT, that's what's on Thursday nights. NXT UK is on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
I knew there was something.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, it's not Thursday nights. It's Thursdays technically because you can go on the network and watch it anytime, I suppose. But so the NXT show, again, I didn't get a chance to watch it. I read kind of a synopsis of the the event as a whole or the show as a whole. They're obviously setting up for a Finn Balor,
Johnny Gargano
match. But before that, they're even teasing a Finn Balor, Tyler Bate thing. I don't know if they're going to have that like next week or if they're going to have like Finn Balor show up on NXT UK as a special thing. But they had Finn Balor against Trent Seven. Finn Balor got the win. Pretty predictable. Again, you're going to have to help me out here because I don't know if the matches were any good or not.
The match was, it was the match you would have thought you saw with Finn Balor and Trent Seven. I mean, it was a decent match. It was okay. This whole card was kind of set up to not overshadow the main event though, because the main event wasn't as big as I think it should have been, and I'll touch on that in a second.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, if we can fast forward straight to the main event, if we want, especially since it's 10 till 10 already, and we still need to talk about the U.S. title.
I mean, when you look at the card and as a whole, they're building up Shotzi Blackheart, obviously, and she got put over. Dominik Dijakovic came out after Damian Priest interrupted Keith Lee's promo, and beats Damian Priest. Adam Cole versus Ciampa, we knew that was coming. Ciampa put Cole through a table. They're going to fight at TakeOver. I didn't like the whole Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai match on a regular NXT,
and the fact that they had Tegan Nox win. I was really shocked. Unless
the storyline's not over and they're gonna take this all the way to TakeOver, what they should have done is kept having Dakota Kai attack Tegan Nox through matches, and Tegan maybe get one in on Dakota before TakeOver, and then they fight. I was just shocked to see it in there, and then they had a Chelsea Green match where she lost,
which is, if they're gonna play off a storyline where she has like a losing streak or something, but that didn't make sense to me.
She lost to Kaden Carter, and so that was interesting. The match that bothered me the most though was the main event, and that's Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne versus the Grizzled Young Veterans to win the Dusty Road Classic. First off, why is that on a regular NXT? Last year that finals match was on the NXT before WrestleMania. It was pushed so hard and so big, and everybody was into it. This year, it got pushed so much. Like I'm wondering why they pushed it so less.
I think it felt like they just threw it together, especially a lot of the tag teams.
It's so early. Last year, like I said, it was on WrestleMania weekend that they did the finale. This year, they had it before we even got to Elimination Chamber.
Yeah,
so like I'm just kind of confused why that match wasn't saved for NXT TakeOver in New Orleans.
No, I 100% agree. I mean, it just
push everything back. They could have done one match a week on NXT for the Dusty Road Classic and kind of stretched it out a little bit longer and made it a little bit more exciting. They've had a TakeOver and put a little bit more emphasis behind it. But it's probably because they're going to do Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne versus the Undisputed Era at TakeOver, because now they get a tag team championship opportunity. So I get it to an extent, but I just told you this as well. It's like, I just don't understand why Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle were put over in this tournament to then go challenge for the tag belts. And then they're making it look like they're going to win them too. They're pushing this broserweight thing so hard that they are hoping it gets over so they can be the ones to dethrone the Undisputed Era and be the tag champions. And then, like you said, we could eventually see a tease of Pete Dunne turning heel and turning on Riddle, but I think you have to put the belts on them to do that. And so it just was lackluster to me that they put it on NXT regular taping. And like I said, this card was set up so nothing overshadowed that match.
It almost felt like, and I didn't watch it, so I don't have full reign to judge it necessarily, but it just felt like from reading about NXT, I'm not upset that I didn't get to watch it, and I probably won't watch it because B, it just felt like it felt like just by reading it, this is one of the worst NXT events from start to finish that's been on USA since they went from the WWE network to network TV.
They're just trying to save their big matches right now for NXT TakeOver, and I get that, but it was almost like they realized that they have a lot of shows to fill here until NXT TakeOver, and they're like, okay, well, what do we do until then?
Yeah.
And you didn't see anything about the Cruiserweight Championship. Like, there's a Fatal 4-Way that's supposed to be happening. They didn't talk about that at all. Like, that would have been the perfect kind of match to put on this card. At least have some excitement, because we had 3 women's matches, and the only name that you probably would know is Tegan Knox and Dakota Kai. Some people might know the Chelsea Green thing, but Shotzi Blackheart versus Diana Perzaro or whatever her name is, like
Peraza, I think.
Like all those matches were like, okay, like there was no like okay, like that's the match I want to see. It was like, okay.
Yeah, I 100%
Even
agree.
Finn Balor was just to give him a win. Like there was nothing about this card that was like, I want to see that, except for the main event, and even then I was bummed that it was on an NXT taping.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to transition a little bit to talking about the United States title, but before we do,
promotional consideration paid for by the following.
So I wanted to mention that you can check out the Going Broadway podcast with new shows every week on Apple Podcasts and Google Play, as well as a number of other platforms where you can access your podcasting. For those of you watching us live right now, each show is archived, and you can go back and watch any one of them on Facebook or via our YouTube channel as well. Go to goingbroadwaypodcast.com/YouTube and check us out there. We are losing T.O. for the rest of the show, I do believe.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Please also download our free app called Yo Radio. It is also able to be downloaded from the App Store or Google Play. Yo Radio is the most advanced user-driven streaming radio service on the market today. Everything you would expect and more from the most full-featured platforms ever developed. Listen to an endless genre of music, podcasts, including our show, via the lineup channel, sports, news, and more. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always 100% free. Again, that's Yo Radio, available via the App Store, Google Play, or by visiting yoradio.com. You can also access our show by going to lineupmedia.fm. So, let's talk about the United States title. And for those of you on the stream right now, again, you can give us your thoughts, your suggestions, and opinions on the United States title. But I wanted to do a topic that's, old school and current as well. So I don't know. The current lineage of the United States title actually goes back to, even pre-WCW, original version of the NWA, whenever, back in the territory days where you had the Mid-Atlantic territory, you had what was the WWF at the time. You had Mid-South Wrestling, you had Central States Wrestling here in this, the St. Louis and Kansas City area. You had big time wrestling in Detroit, up in the Michigan area. You had AWA in Minnesota. You just had tons of territory. So the current version of the United States title, the lineage goes back to the Mid-Atlantic title in the 70s, where Harley Race was the first United States champion, defeating Johnny Weaver in a tournament to become the inaugural champion. And then, of course, there was a star-studded list of guys that held the title. Terry Funk, Johnny Valentine, Blackjack Mulligan, Ric Flair had it, Ricky Steamboat had it. They actually traded it back and forth in the late 70s. Jimmy Snuka, Roddy Piper, Sergeant Slaughter, Wahoo McDaniel, Greg Valentine. And a lot of these names are ones I grew up on eventually whenever they went to WWF. So I find it fascinating just looking into the history of pro wrestling. And when I found out that a lot of these guys were United States champion, I just thought that was really cool. And there's actually a series of books out there written by Dick Bourne that goes through the different titles in the history of pro wrestling. There's one on the United States title. There's one on the big gold belt that Ric Flair introduced in the 80s. There's one on the Mid-Atlantic Championship. So I would encourage you guys to read those if you're an old school fan like me. Oddly enough, though, whenever I hear United States title or United States champion, and everyone's going to have a different answer for this, just because of when they started watching wrestling, their their time of when they watched it, whether as a kid, as an adult, both, whatever. But the first person I think of when I hear United States title is actually Lex Luger, because he had it probably, I want to say 5 or 6 times. I gotta look here and see what this says.
6.
Is it 6? Okay. He's the first person I think of, good or bad. I mean, I don't know if it's either, but that's just because that was who I was accustomed to watching and having the belt whenever.
I'm sorry, it was 5.
Is it 5?
It was
Okay.
5. I just looked.
Lex Luger is the one I was always so used to seeing, holding that belt whenever I watched wrestling. So, Cole, who do you whenever you think United States title, who do you think of? Who's the first person that pops in your mind?
Oh, that's so tough. Because for me, it's John Cena because of when I watch wrestling.
Right.
John Cena's also held it like 5 times as well. And that's kind of what made John Cena, though. His United States reigns, and he was doing the Thug Life, Word Life kind of gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what built him up, was getting those reigns. So I always think John Cena, and the other name that comes to mind is just Ric Flair. You know, this belt's kind of the belt that, if you go and look at the list of people that have held this belt, I would say over 75% of them go on to be like top tier guys in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
There was a handful that are like, they were probably always mid card. You would probably know who they are, but they weren't ever like the guy in WWE,
Right.
or in wrestling in general. But when you look at this list, like, there's just so many: Booker T, Chris Benoit, JBL.
One person I'm surprised you didn't mention was MVP.
I mean, MVP is on there, but he's not like a top tier guy. You know, MVP was never the.
Which really surprises me because, okay, so with his United States title reigns, and I'm just going off Wikipedia, guys. I'm not saying this is gospel or anything, so this could very, very, very well be wrong. But MVP is actually 5th all time in the number of days recognized as champion.
Yeah.
He's at 419, but he only had 2 reigns. That beats out guys like Cena, who is 5-time champion. Beats out guys like Rick Rude, Chris Benoit, Dean Ambrose, now known as John Moxley, The Miz, Rusev, Sergeant Slaughter. You know, that's just
You got to look at it like this, though. At the time that MVP was there doing mid card stuff, like, name other mid card guys.
there wasn't a ton.
Like he was so. That's what I was talking about earlier. He was so over as a heel that he was just killing. Like, they had killer promos or killer matches with him and Matt Hardy going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Did some tag team stuff with them where he was the heel, Matt Hardy was the face. They won the belts but hated each other, and so, like, he was the guy. Like, he was one of the main mid card guys to where, like, you just didn't want to take the belt off of him because there was really no one else to put the belt on.
Right.
And so, I enjoyed MVP in the mid card. Sadly, it didn't elevate him like it did other guys. Because you also got guys like Shelton Benjamin who's held the belt. Mid card guys like Kofi Kingston and The Miz and R-Truth and.
It's just I agree. It's unfortunate that guys that
Dolph
have
Ziggler.
held the United States title, because I agree. It's always been thought of as a spring point to a main event-esque status along with the Intercontinental title. But you've got guys on here that never made it there. Like
Guys that they-
unfortunately, like you said, MVP, they never pushed, which I think they could have. That's just my opinion. R-Truth has been United States champion.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Santino Marella,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Santino.
Jack Swagger, Zack Ryder.
Zack Ryder. That's
So my thing on this, though, is that if you look at it at the time that they got the belts, they were people that they were considering. They were people at the time that they were like, okay, this person might be somebody that we could springboard into a main card status at the time.
yeah.
Even when R-Truth had it, he was older, but they liked his promos. They liked what he could do on the mic, and they were like, maybe we can put this guy into a main card kind of status. It just never really took off.
Yeah.
Mr. Kennedy is probably one of the highlighted people on that list because they had high hopes for him
Mm-hmm.
when he came in. And Bobby Roode. There are so many guys. Dolph Ziggler. There's so many guys on this list that I just feel like they've always wanted to take to that next level, and they just never really got there.
Yep. And as far as Mr. Kennedy, well, slash Mr. Anderson, now he's with NWA also.
That doesn't shock me.
Um,
I mean, it took Kofi Kingston was notorious in that division, and it took him 11 years to finally kind of break into
yeah.
being considered main card status.
Mhm. Here's a stat for you guys. So the person with the second shortest number of days recognized as United States champion, Edge.
Yeah,
That's
I saw that last night. And I was like, oh,
um
Carlito was on there, and they had high hopes for him. They always tried to kind of sneak him into like elimination chamber matches or like those 6-man or 5-man matches where
yeah.
they've kind of done with Kofi over the years. Eddie Guerrero's on that list. Kurt Angle, Rhino.
I mean it's a who's who of lists. I mean, especially whenever you go back to whenever the belt was in WCW. I mean, you had Steve Austin. Whenever he was in WCW, he was United
Jeff Jarrett.
States. I'm thinking earlier mid '90s. I guess Jeff Jarrett's technically in there. I'm thinking like 93, 94,
Yeah,
95 time frame. But Sting was champion. You had Dustin Rhodes was champion. Barry Windham. Actually, Barry Windham's title reign was in the 80s. Scratch that.
If you go up just a little bit, even though until like 96, 97, you're looking at guys like Dean Malenko,
Yeah.
Kurt Hennig, Diamond Dallas Page, Raven, Goldberg, Bret Hart,
Yeah. Conan was United States
Conan,
champion.
Jim Duggan,
Jim Duggan.
Big Van Vader, Ricky Steamboat.
Having Jim Duggan win the United States title in '94, that was a shocker to me, because even though WWF had him on a pretty grand platform, I mean they always put him in good storylines and with in decent matches with people. They never put a belt on him. They never really pushed him past. I mean, he was mid card at best. But I mean, and that was his WCW debut. They brought Jim Duggan in as a surprise opponent for Steve Austin for the United States title because Ricky Steamboat was injured, and they had him beat Austin in like 20 seconds, something like that. But then they only had the belt on him for maybe like 3 months, if I remember correctly, and I think he lost it to Vader at a pay-per-view event, and then that was basically it as far as Jim Duggan's title reigns in WCW until I want to say around the time WCW was closing, and they put him in a storyline where he was like a trash man. He found the WCW television title in the trash can, and anyway, I'm not going to go down that road, but
I forgot about One Man Gang.
Yeah, One Man Gang. I'm not sure that was.
It was one in the dark match.
It was a dark match. It was either before or after a pay-per-view. I just remember
it was
that
post pay-per-view in a dark match, and it was restarted because was it Kinsuke? I can't even say that name.
It was Sasaki.
I don't remember him at all.
He was a smaller guy, but I mean he's pretty big in Japan. I mean he's had victories over Sting and.
This is actually kind of interesting. It says it was subsequently retained by him, but it was never acknowledged by WCW, nor is it acknowledged by WWE.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think they tried the match once, and then they somehow botched the finish, and then had to go back out and re-record it. Other stuff I've read has said that they botched the finish, but they were so mad about it backstage because I guess Sasaki was the one that botched the finish. They actually said, okay, not only are you going to go out and restart the match, because I guess Sasaki was supposed to retain, they just screwed it up somehow. They were so mad about it that they basically said, okay, not only are you going to go restart the match, One Man Gang is going to beat you for the title. So there's just in the history of wrestling, not just this title in particular, but there's a lot of interesting little, I guess, tidbits of information that that have just happened throughout the course of.
Yeah, I read some of these, and it says like some of them aren't recognized by WCW, but are recognized by WWE. Like Terry Funk winning it in a house show, Lance Storm winning it in a house show.
That's one thing I was going to mention. So, real quick, William says the Luger version of the U.S. title is his favorite. He owns a replica. That is a great belt, and that kind of is a great segue to the versions of the physical versions of the belt that there have been over the years. So the NWA version itself has had 1, 2, 3, I think 4 different versions. So you've got, and I don't have any pictures handy. I'll just have to look them up. You've got a version that's it's got like a red crocodile strap, just with like really thick plates. I mean, it's just as old school can be. It's actually very similar to the current NWA National Heavyweight belt that's out there, except it's just got different designs and stuff. But the strap is very similar. They had a black croc strap eventually. And again, you can read all about this in that United States title book, the history of the United States title, or whatever the title of the book's called. Let me just look real quick. But it's written by Dick Bourne. He's written a lot of historical books when it comes to wrestling. It's just called United States Championship: A Close Look. United States Championship: A Close Look at Mid-Atlantic Wrestling's Greatest Championship. But yeah, they had a version on the black strap. The plates were the same, and then they switched to a Southern style black strap where it had 5 plates on it. You got the main plate, and then the 4 outer side plates. They're all circled. And then there was 5 different versions. Then you had then the rest of these were on black straps. You had another version that was originally colored, red and blue. Had some red and blue paint on it. It might have had some white. I don't remember. But then the paint faded. And so you had what eventually was, you'll see a lot of photos with Magnum TA with the belt with, there's just no paint on it. And then you had, like William said, you've got the Luger version, which was the last version of the NWA title. And that was inevitably was very similar to the versions that WCW had in later years. In WWE, you've got the current version, but somewhere in the middle, you also had Cena's spinner version. So,
I'm always gonna love the spinner belts. I know a lot of people don't, but I love the spinner belts.
I would say so. Again, William's favorite is the Luger version, which is the very last NWA version. I'd have to say my favorite version is actually the one that I mentioned that had red and blue paint on it originally, and then it either faded or chipped away.
Which one is that?
That's not a real one.
I was gonna say that one. I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, you'll see pictures on Google that people post that they've created in like WWE 2K or something like that.
I was like, that one doesn't look familiar.
No. I'd say my favorite's probably the one that I mentioned that had paint on it originally and then it faded off, and then it was just completely silver, and it's actually been coined the 10 pounds of silver because it's very similar in appearance to the NWA World Heavyweight title, the current version, which is also the version back in the early 80s. And it's been coined the 10 pounds of silver for that reason. I think that'd probably be my favorite. A lot of the belts have like the double edged lacing on the outer part, and I don't know, I just find that really cool. So
that Lex Luger one is cool.
What's that?
I'm looking at the Lex one right now.
Yeah,
it looks really cool.
The Luger version is a close second for me. I think that'd have to be my second favorite U.S. title. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, it's in terms of it being second, there's no other belt that's close. I'd probably have to go with I'm going to call it the Magnum TA / Roddy Piper / Greg Valentine version, because they're the ones that had it. Wahoo McDaniel might have also had it. Again, it originally had some red and blue paint on it, and it faded over time, and it just became all silver. So, for those of you that might be on the stream now or watching this later, drop us a comment. Let us know what your favorite version was. and just what you overall think of the United States title. Who you first think of whenever someone mentions the United States title, maybe who you think should have held the title and never did. Who do you think, held the title and you think maybe shouldn't have? Just leave us some comments, thoughts. Also give us some of your suggestions on future topics. I like talking about belts and just history of championships in general. So this might be something we do more often, maybe on a once a month basis. But I think that's going to about wrap it up for us for today. Any final thoughts from you, sir?
No, I'm excited to see what happens on these upcoming pay-per-views and shows, and yeah, I'm just excited to see where it goes. We're in a good time of the year for wrestling. So
yeah, this is my favorite time of the year for sure. I would say, if I had to pick, I would say Royal Rumble is still probably my favorite pay-per-view, but depending on the matches, WrestleMania would be a very, very, very close second. But I think a lot of that's attributed to the fact that WrestleMania is so long, and the Royal Rumble was long, and not including the pre-show, it was over 4 hours.
I'm just excited for the Chamber. I want to see what's that middle of that look like, because here the Chamber used to be one of the best pay-per-views out there, and now they have it in the middle of WrestleMania season, which means a lot of things don't change.
Yeah,
on that pay-per-view. So I just kind of interested to see where they go with it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do over the next few months, just because, between WWE and AEW, they're keeping us guessing, which is a good thing. It'll be interesting to see what they do as far as pushing their storylines. So, yeah.
I'm going to go watch NWA now.
We'll see.
I want to see what that roster looks like.
But that's going to wrap it up for us this week. For Cole, for Tio, who has already stepped out, for Alex, myself, we will see you on Monday.
And so, goodbye. And good night. Bang!
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.